So I'm having a go at making another batch of natural live stirred yogurt, which I've been doing for a while now, so I feel like I've got the process down. And the difference this time is I'm making my way up to using unpasteurized Jersey cow's milk, which is, in my opinion, and many others, the best milk that you can use. It also means that the milk hasn't been heated, pasteurized, and in many cases, when you buy milk from a supermarket, it will also be homogenized, which changes the fat molecules. And in my mind, the milk you would buy from the high street isn't actually milk; it's just the wrong stuff. So, making my way up to using raw, unpasteurized Jersey cow's milk is a good step. So the first thing I'm doing here, and the reason I've got a bit of an eclectic mix of jars out, is I'm trying to work out how many jars I need, which I always seem to forget because I don't buy jars. I collect them from family when they finished with pots of pasta sauce or pickles or jam or whatever it might be. So everything here is upcycled or recycled. So I'm just measuring out the amount of liquid that I have, which is about 4.5 litres, just to see what jars are going to hold that quantity. So that's the first step, and then I'm going to sterilise the jars for a few minutes while I prepare a few more things. I've got my jars selected, which always seems like there's never going to be enough space in the jars, but I always measure it out, so there is enough for 4.5 litres. I normally try and include a nice jar. It's not Kilner, but it's a jar, just purely for my mother to keep her happy. I think it's a sensible thing for any son-in-law or daughter-in-law. And then what I've got over here is I make sure that I use warm water when I'm taking out the jars. And I put that in the sink, so I haven't wasted it. And then I'm just using this VWP sterilizer, which I always have around the house anyway for brewing, and it only needs less than a teaspoonful for this sort of quantity of water. So what I'm going to do is just use a jug, take the water that's got the sterilising granules dissolved in it, pour it into each of the jars, and leave that for about 10 minutes. It is to make sure there's no bad bacteria in the jars, because I want the stirred yogurt, once it's done, it can last for between easily 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, which is just another thing I'm realising that shop bought, or sorry, high street bought, supermarket bought products generally have a much shorter shelf life because they've already been in the system for quite a long time before they get to your shelf or your fridge at home. And obviously, the ones that have got a much longer shelf life have probably been butchered to such an extent that the product you're having really isn't what it says on the tin. So that's the next step. And then while that's happening, I'll be preparing a few things in the background. I've got my jars sterilising over there, and the bit of prep that I always do while they're sterilising, because also you need to make sure you rinse those, put them to one side, and get everything ready at the point the milk is heated through, because we're going to need to stir that constantly. So that's why preparation is good here. So the first thing is to allow the milk to come up to room temperature. And this time, like I say, I'm using unpasteurized real milk. It's from a place called John's Jerseys in Bosbury in Herefordshire. There's a few reasons why I'm using real milk, because it's not been pasteurized. All the natural enzymes and the goodness that comes straight out of the cow hasn't been killed here ultimately. The only reason to pasteurize is to kill off certain strains of bacteria or disease that could exist. But for me, that's really just masking issues at the source. So unpasteurized real milk, places are only allowed to sell it if they have been inspected correctly and they've passed very stringent tests with their cattle and their production environment. You can find out the list of those sorts of dairies on the gov.uk website. John Jersey's is one of those companies. So they are producing milk of the absolute highest quality because they have to, which means that we're going to get goodness from the actual milk. So that's one of them. And then the other thing I'm going to be preparing is the starter culture. So I've gone with CHR Hansen starter cultures. It's an absolute minefield when you start to look at it. There's many different types that will do many different things. The one I'm going for here is just called ABT5. It's one that gives a medium viscosity, so a nice texture to the milk. In my experience, I've actually seen that you can buy Greek yogurt, which is much thicker, but to get there, you actually need to lose a lot of weight, and so you're losing goodness from what's come from the milk in the first place. But if you go with a starter culture that gives you a thicker end product, a thicker yogurt, you don't need to strain out the whey to get that thickness, and then you retain the goodness of the whey, and you lose less of what you bought in the first place. I really hate to see the whey going down the drain off me. So I'm using ABT5, and that's so a medium viscosity, medium flavour as well of live natural yogurt, but also it contains 2 strains of probiotic bacteria. There's loads of information about that on the internet. You just would search for BB-12 or LA-5, because we are trying to improve what we put into our bodies as a family. We just read the fantastic Eat Dirt by Dr. Josh Ack, and the probiotic strains are included in this culture are mentioned in the book as a way to help improve the bacteria and the microbiome that exists in our guts. Is a root cause of many modern diseases and illnesses. So I'm going to be weighing this out. It's surprising how little you need of the starter culture. It really is wonderful stuff. I'm also going to be measuring out the real milk and pop it into the pan so it's up to a bit more of the room temperature before I start. Okay, so we're making good progress. Just out of the shot there, I've rinsed off all of the jars with cold water. That's okay because tap water is there or thereabouts sterile as well. And I've made sure that the surface I've put the jars on is also sterile. So I've used a natural antibacterial spray, which is super easy. So to avoid some of those nasty chemicals in your house that get into your lungs and your body and on your skin, just use vinegar, any type of vinegar, but I find distilled vinegar is the best because whilst you might be worried about the smell of vinegar, it really does go away pretty quickly. So distilled vinegar and lemon juice, and you have a natural. I'm going to have a play around with different essential oils and a few other ways to make that, but ultimately that's that. And then the other job that's prepared, so the milk is in the pan and we're just allowing that to come up to temperature a little bit, so you're not starting from very cold. And I've also, in preparation, put the oven on to the very lowest setting. I'm not using the fan. I just don't want to. I don't want air to be circulating too much. Because what we're going to need to do after we've heated the milk, then cooled it, and put the culture in, the starter culture in, we're going to need to put it somewhere that's warm for about 3 to 4 hours to allow the do its magic. So the next part of the job is really quite straightforward. I'm just going to be putting this on out of the setting of from 0 to 9. I'm going to be putting it on a setting of 8. It's going to take about 25 minutes to get up to 85 degrees. And then after that, I'm going to take it off the heat. I'm going to bring the temperature back down, and I'm going to do a few more steps before putting the starter culture in. So this is the reason why really the preparation is important at the start, because you are stood here, you have to stir it. The reason why it's a third yoghurt recipe, you have to be stirring it gently for all the time that it's coming up gradually to temperature. And we can also control the thickness of the end product by heating it slower for longer, so it takes longer to come up to 85 degrees C. So that's going to be what I'm doing for the next 30 minutes or so. So we're pretty close to this milk being ready. It's been heating gently. Where are we at now? 28 minutes. You want to really take at least 20 minutes to get up to 85 degrees. And the longer you take over that time to get up to that temperature, then the thicker the end product will be, which is pretty cool. You can probably see as well there's beans on toast on the work surface. It's got absolutely nothing to do with what I'm doing here, except for it's lunchtime, so I'm multitasking. So I've been constantly stirring for all of the time with the help of my and as soon as we get to 85 degrees, I'm going to take it off the heat, I'm going to put the lid on, and I'm going to leave it for 5 minutes. We're just at the moment at 84.4 degrees, so it won't be too much longer. It will have taken roughly 30 minutes to get up to temperature. I did start from 0 to in the from 0 to 9 on the hob. I've been at 8 most of the time, and then 7 for about the last 10 minutes. I wanted to just slow it down a bit. I wanted to see what the thickness is going to be like, just taking a bit longer to get up to temperature. Any second now, so that's 85 degrees. So I'm going to take this off the heat, put on the lid, and try not to drop milk onto my beans on toast. And then using the timer, I'm going to put that at 5 minutes, and I'm just going to leave that there before doing the next step. With the thermometer, I'm using a food grade thermometer. It's worth the investment because it will last for years. But I also found out that using meat thermometers, they don't work in water and they go wrong eventually. And I've always ruined a batch of yogurt in the past, thinking that the temperature was completely wrong. But it was just because I'd ruined the probe by putting it into the thing. So it's worth investing. It's the TFA Dostman type model. So that's it. I'm going to leave that for the next few minutes. We're down to about 4 minutes 20. I'm going to finish my lunch. I'm going to help Arthur with his lunch, and then we're going to come back and do the next bit. Okay, so we've been waiting 5 minutes. I think my beans on toast. So what I'm doing now is placing this milk in some cold water, and I've actually put in some ice packs. I haven't done that before, to be honest. The reason I'm doing that is I want to see if that helps to cool the milk quickly enough. Normally, I would just put cold water in and stir it to help reduce the temperature a bit. But I've just been reading that stirring aerates, which is not what you want to do. So what I'm doing is just cold water with ice packs. See if that helps the temperature. I want to bring it down to about 43 degrees. So where are we at the moment? A lot hotter than that. It's still steaming. So we've got a little while to go. And you'll see that in that 5 minute rest, I was preparing everything up here, because what I want to do, once this gets down to temperature, we want to mix in the starter culture, which I normally grind up, and because I want it to dissolve in the milk, and then I'm going to use these jugs to decant it into the jars, and then I'm going to put the jars in the oven at very super low heat for about 4 hours. And the reason I want to put it in the jars rather than just leave it in the pan, which some recipes say do, is because once they go in the jars, it sets. And in the past, when I've let it set in the pan, you then have to scoop it out, put it in the jars, and you end up with air inside the yogurt, and it's a bit lumpy. So I quite like setting them in the jars that they're going to actually be in the first place. So there's not much else to do at this point. What I'm going to do, occasionally give it a stir, because otherwise the top just start to set, and we don't want to do that. And then I'm just going to keep checking it, and at the point it's come down to 43 degrees, I'm going to add in the starter culture and go to the next stage. Okay, so we've been cooling the milk in the sink. I've probably changed the water about 3 times, because even with the ice packs it does warm up fairly quickly. But actually the ice packs have really helped. I've only stirred a couple of times, just very gently, to stop the top of the milk from setting. And it really has brought the temperature down at a reasonable rate. So we're down to about 45 degrees at the moment. Just a quick stir, also to help to move the temperature around a bit, down to 40. But there we go, 43 degrees. So what I'm going to do, this next bit is a bit of a rush. Take the thermometer out. I'm going to stir in the starter here, which I've ground up fine. I've not read that you should do that, but my feeling is that it dissolves better. I have had it where it really doesn't dissolve very quickly at all, and I want it to dissolve faster and evenly, and go all the way through the milk, because I'm not putting this pan in the oven for the milk to set into yogurt. I'm pouring it into the jars, and my feeling is if the starter culture is only in one part of the milk, those jars are just going to be warm milk rather than nice live yogurt. So I'm stirring that. So I'm stirring that in nice and gently. Again, I have recently read not to aerate. You must de-aerate the milk at around this point, or at least through the production of it. Having a nice close look. That's not all mixed in, but it's looking pretty good. Just a little bit longer. Shouldn't start messing up the water because that will temperature down too much. So the ice packs, that's me trying to do too many things at once. The next bit gets a bit messy because for some reason this pan just doesn't pour very well. So I end up tipping lots of it over the surface in between getting it out of the pan and into the jars. But I think that looks pretty good. So that's only really been a couple of minutes, and definitely grinding up the starter culture first does work quite well. So that looks okay to me now. So now I'm going to just have a quick double check. Just got bubbles there, and not actual starter culture that's not dissolved. And then, so this is the bit where it gets all messy. So I'm going to, as quick as possible, tip this into the jugs. I've been quite lucky at that point. And then I'm going to pour jars. Even my mother-in-law wants the best one. Important to store as many brownie points as possible. And then I'm basically going to go around and do all the others, which you don't necessarily need to watch. And then the next step is into the oven, which I will do next. There we go. That's all of the milk and starter culture measured out. Now, quickly, we want to get the lids on. Don't want to lose heat, really, because we're still only part of the way through. Try and get the right lid. Hellmann's mayonnaise jars, by the way, are excellent for this sort of purpose. Now, the reason I really like a starter culture to give you a thick yoghurt compared to straining some of the way to get a grease, is virtually zero waste. You start off with 4.5 litres of raw milk. And you end up with almost 4.5 litres of raw milk. When I measured out the water in the first place to check how many jars I needed, 4.5 litres would have also filled up this jar, which is tiny. So that's really all that's been lost through evaporation. So, and I think it's a real shame to lose any of the original product because of the effort and care and love that's gone into nurturing and caring for the cows through the milking process. So that's why this really works for me. And to be honest, with the right starter culture, you don't need to strain the way out to get a thick Greek yogurt. You can get that thickness by having the right sort of process in the first place. So at this point, I'm just going to put it into the oven. It's on the lowest setting possible, which is about 40 degrees C. I'm going to leave it for about 4 hours. And at that point, I will have lovely live natural yogurt ready to put into the fridge. And the next stage, which I will show you as well.